What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, joined by Adonis. I've got a panel for you. As always, the two gentlemen who accompany me every week here on Unleash, the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Shutdown.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I understand that you had a nice, relaxing weekend, got out of the grind a little bit. I envy you, but it's good to have you here.
Thank you. It was good to step away from society for just a little bit and enjoy some family time before there's increased number of family in the house. So very calm, very relaxing. Did not watch any fighting. I caught up on all of it before we started the broadcast today. So, of course, the panel is anchored every week by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com, my man, Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on?
Every time we have these shows, these regular shows, once a Monday, I get that jolt of excitement. Still to this day, we're at show number 86 for this iteration of it, and I still get that. Oh, this is going to be fun. I have some thoughts. Like I was writing you guys both today, saying, "Boy, I got some thoughts for tonight." There's some silliness that's going on this week. So, speaking of silliness going on this week, there's no more important stat to me than what happened over this past weekend. It was actually technically before the weekend because it happened on Thursday. So the stat of the week is 4. 4 is the stat of the week because it took 4 days. If you really want to, count the hours, you can do that too. It took exactly 4 days for the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board to overturn Fabricio Werdum's loss to Ferreira in PFL 3. Took them 4 days to overturn that result. When you know how these processes work, these are months long. Was it a Drew Dober fight that took a year? No, Chaz Skelly. The Chaz Skelly fight took about a year and a half to overturn that result. Took 4 days to overturn that, and I think we might talk about that later tonight.
Yeah, they're still trying to overturn the John Jones loss to Matt Hamill. Like that was what, like 2009 or 2010, something like that. So definitely a topic of conversation a little bit later in the show. But let's get to the main event of the UFC this weekend at the Apex Center. We had Michelle Waterson against Marina Rodriguez. Definitely not a Fast and Furious sequel, but it was a UFC flyweight main event. So that's notable because we're talking about two strawweights. Now that Rodriguez picked up the win here, do you think the UFC is going to treat this as if she won at strawweight and adjust the rankings accordingly?
I think so. I think more or less they'll treat it like a win at strawweight. And I understand where they're coming from with that, but I will say that having the fight at flyweight, I think favored Rodriguez in every meaningful way. We're talking about Rodriguez. I mean, she's not a titanic strawweight, but she's tall and rangy. She probably cuts a decent amount to make 115, whereas Waterson is a former atomweight champion and Invicta who, I mean, she weighed in at 125 on the nose, but I suspect she had like a bucket of chicken in her hand. I assume that she had to cut no weight at all to make 125. Like she just had a regular breakfast that morning. So, I mean, that works in Rodriguez's favor. So it tells us a little less than it would have if they'd both had to make 115, but it's still probably the best win of her, like the best complete performance of her career so far. So, they'll take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I'm kind of reminded of when Roy Jones fought Ruiz, I think John Ruiz, and when he weighed in, he had like a full-on tracksuit. He had a full sweatsuit, and he probably had little weights in his pockets and everything as he stepped on the scale. So that image just popped up in my mind. Jay, what do you think this does for the rankings? Do you think it even matters?
Well, I think it's the opposite of Roy Nelson wearing a big fat suit when he came out to weigh in one time. I'm split right now because I personally loved the idea of putting an important fight up a weight class, just like, you're fighting at this weight class. Now, granted, there was a ton that went into this to make this a flyweight fight, like the fact that it was put together on a week's notice, like the fact that one of the two fighters didn't get to Las Vegas until, what was it, Thursday, I think. So she was cutting weight on the flights and on the layovers. Like, I think she was actually in Houston for a while. You should have said, hit her up anyway. This was a bizarre situation that they wouldn't do otherwise. I personally don't have this having any relevance or bearing on the way the strawweight division goes, because this fight would have played out very differently at 115 pounds. I mean, Marina Rodriguez very possibly and very likely cut weight to get to 125, where Michelle Waterson was, 125 on the button?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one of those, oh, cool. Oh, yeah, she was 125 flat. I always will push for fighters to move up in weight. I sometimes have the wish that commissions would take the one possible successful idea one championship had about weight cutting, in that take everybody, move them up a weight class. Not just obviously the specifics that go into it, all that's we don't want to talk about that, because they don't want to talk about that either. But just to say, okay, you're all going up 10 pounds or to the next category would be great, because Marina Rodriguez looked better in this division. I feel she had 5-round cardio. I don't think she would have had with that pace, with that power at strawweight. And Waterson did Waterson things for 1 round. The karate NCAA wrestling champion hottie had 1 round of that success, and it was in round 4, and everybody must have been like Holly Holm must have been somewhere going, are you kidding me? It was that easy? You could have done that in the 2nd round and won this fight. What are we doing here? And then she didn't ever try to take the fight down again. I have more thoughts on that, but I don't want to bog it down too far. We should have had Neil Magny versus Geoff Neal as a 5-round main event. I'll say that. I feel like that could have been better suited, have more implications, more relevant, and all the rest of it. Because even though Waterson and Rodriguez are ranked strawweights, it's a flyweight fight. It doesn't mean the same. You're both compromised. You've had to deal with a different training camp. It's all the difference. Everything's different. So it's where everything's made up, and the weights don't matter.
Yeah, I think this is one of the rare cases where fighting out of the weight class really doesn't matter a whole lot. It'd be one thing if the rankings at strawweight were reversed, because Waterson was 3 places behind Rodriguez, sitting at number 9, while Rodriguez is at number 6. So really nothing should change. That would have, Rodriguez, according to the rankings, should have beat Waterson if we're going to stick by that numbered system. So there it is. Like, strawweight doesn't have to change at all. So I think that makes a lot of sense to just leave it as is, and you'll treat this, you just won't match them up at strawweight, and they can just go on and do whatever they were going to do otherwise. It just seems like a problem that could have existed but doesn't really after it's all said and done. So there's that. But let's move things along here. I mean, the Roy Nelson fat suit, that's forgot all about that. But it's like Roy Nelson wearing a fat suit is like me wearing a sexy suit. Like, it's totally unnecessary. But anyway, we're going to transition to our swing or miss portion of the show. I'll kick this one to you first, Jay. Are you going to swing or miss on this one? Donald Cerrone just fought for the last time in the octagon.
Ooh. Donald Cerrone's 38 years young now. He's on a 6-fight winless streak, hasn't won a fight since 2019, including in 2 different weight classes. God, man. This is one of those situations where Cerrone, you know how he is and how he operates. He won't be done. And Dana didn't have that same Chuck Liddell, Joe Rogan to Brendan Schaub type of approach to this fight. We're like, okay, it was like in Avengers 2. It's like the sun's getting real low here. It didn't have that same exact feel, but you can tell that we're slowing down. Cerrone looked good for about ooh, what do you
30
say?
seconds.
25 seconds or so.
Yeah.
He landed a couple good shots. He pushed Morono against the fence, but he didn't. His head movement or lack thereof, which by the way, Cerrone was so open about this in the media day, saying, "Yeah, I worked on my head movement." As he laughed and said, "You guys know, you've seen my fights. I don't move my head at all." This was Morono's night, and this worked out great for him. But I know Cerrone well enough to know that he has a lifeline unlike most. Like, he has a lifeline like Andrei Arlovsky has a lifeline. He can lose 5 fights in a row badly, and then they'll give him something. And Cerrone isn't even a former champion to have that precarious situation of, who is Arlovsky stepping in to fight now? The number 49 heavyweight in the world? Are we okay with this? Whereas Cerrone, he's high profile enough where the Morono fight wasn't a mismatch. Cerrone was still a favorite coming into that, but it was short notice. He's going to be in the mid-card, low-card situation going forward, and he might fight somebody that 5 years ago, we go, what the hell is going on? So all in all, I think he's going to fight again, even if I don't agree he should. It's not my biz,
Allow me to step just a little bit out of turn here, Ben, because I'm gonna miss on this one as well. The difference between Donald Cerrone and Anthony Pettis, or you think of some of the other, or Anderson Silva, like some of the other high-profile fighters that are action-friendly, that the UFC has let go. They tend to be about their money. And they also are more selective about the matchmaking. We can think recently to JDS turning down a late notice replacement fight, and getting released from the promotion as a result. Donald Cerrone isn't the type to do that. He is the one that you can call the day of the fight, and he'll show up at heavyweight if he felt like it. He will be the one who does that. And at the same time, he's not going to ask for a bigger payday for extending himself any further.
$200,000 to get brained by Conor McGregor.
Exactly.
$200,000.
Exactly. For the biggest, I believe it was the biggest pay-per-view of last year, and he got 200 grand for that flat. And seemed to be content with that. Like, this is also, remember before that McGregor fight was finalized, when they initially tried to make that fight, and the pushback that McGregor was giving the promotion about not having it be a main event, which was going to affect their pay, and Cerrone was saying, just sign the contract. Like, McGregor was campaigning for your pockets as well, but Cerrone, strangely enough, who was once part of a failed union effort, has since toed the company line quite openly, and I think that is what's going to save him here. You're gonna be a guy who's gonna jump in at any opportunity, and you don't have to get paid extra to do it. Sounds like someone that's tailor made for the UFC in this era.
Before, I'm sorry, I'm going to step on Duffy too, just to say one last thing. Before, I wish that Carlos Condit was not in a 2-fight win streak, because otherwise that fight would have made sense. Losing streak versus losing streak, training partner versus training partner. But Condit's won 2 in a row now, so he can't make that reasonably. Anyway, carry on, Duffy.
For one thing, miss. I wouldn't be surprised if Cerrone fights twice more this year. But if you've been a fan of this sport since the WEC days, and both of you have easily and then some, this was never going to end any other way. This was never going to end any other way than Donald Cerrone losing a long streak of really bad losses for embarrassingly low paychecks. I mean, the thing that we loved and revered him for, like, I could always take or leave his personality, his persona, the god-awful walkout track, the hat. Like, I could take or leave that. I loved him as a fighter. The anyone, anytime. He was the original anyone, anytime, any place, except maybe Tank Abbott. But, but for someone who actually trained, he was the original anyone, anytime, any place. He was win or lose. His fights were always exciting. But the flip side of that is, he was a company guy before we had a name for it. And for 10 years now, he's been very open about his financial, situation, his tax problems. I mean, he looks to be on top of the world right now, relatively. You know, he owns BMF Ranch. He's a family man. He's, you know, but he's still clearly living paycheck to paycheck. Like, if he's like almost panic tweeting Conor McGregor to sign the contract, and he'll take $200,000 instead of just waiting a couple weeks and see if McGregor can get him $2 million. Like, that says something about his mindset. This was never going to end any other way. He's not done fighting in the UFC. He's not done losing, and he's probably not done losing in kind of depressing ways.
Hey, I have a bonus swing or miss for both of you that just came to mind. Swing or miss. Donald Cerrone fights more times going forward in 2021 than Conor McGregor does. Swing.
Oh, swing. Home run. Grand slam. Like, yeah. Conor McGregor is just the most inactive person who seems to be active in the news cycle. So, yeah, Cerrone is the exact opposite. Yeah. Cerrone in retirement might fight more times than McGregor.
Well, I mean, if you gave me like the over-under on MMA fights for McGregor from now until he dies at 1.5, I might take the under.
Yeah. Especially
like
after that proper 12 deal.
When Poirier beats him for the
like
for
if Poirier beats
match?
him and like Nate Diaz gets crushed by Leon Edwards.
There's no way that's going to happen.
Like enough of the like that thing is past its expiration date. The thing they always had in their back pocket, the Nate Diaz trilogy, it's going to be like a smelly, rotten hamburger made of garbage.
Which
means it'll sell like I was about to say it'll sell 1.5 million buys.
So does the 1.5 under, does that include like Paul brother fights?
No,
because
MMA.
that
MMA.
Just MMA. Okay, all right, yeah, because there's a whole freak show circuit out there for McGregor. That he'll be on like the next iteration of Pros versus Joes and just like beat up on some PTA dad or something. So that'll be it. All right, let's move along here to what, in the opinion of the panel, should have been the late notice main event for Saturday night. Neil Magny and Geoff Neal fought their way to a pretty grueling decision in favor of Neil Magny. Gentlemen, do you think that win, or I should say that fight, does that show more about Magny or does it show more about Neil? And Geoff Neal, I should say, because this is Neil versus Neil right here.
Go ahead.
Geoff Neal. Neil Magny is what he is, which is not to say he's not improving. He is making incremental improvements, and at age 33, he doesn't seem to be slowing physically. Like he is in his prime right now, but Neil Magny is what he is. His real weakness remains takedown defense, but Geoff Neal wasn't going to exploit that. This tells me more about Geoff Neal. In a vacuum, he might be the best like pure boxer in the welterweight division. He's got great power. Headhunts a little too much, but what I see from Geoff Neal is 2 fights in a row now where he has failed to make adjustments between rounds when things were not going his way. And against Thompson, it may have just been too big an ask. You know, Stephen Thompson is, in my opinion, one of the greatest strikers in MMA history. And generally speaking, I mean, if you don't have the threat of the takedown and you're just going to try to outstrike Stephen Thompson, that is a huge, huge ask. With Magny, it was it was more concerning to me. And it does make me wonder if Neil's health problems last year have taken something out of him. And he sort of alluded to that in the post-fight presser. But yeah, Magny just frustrated him. You know, he just broke up his rhythm by clinching with him, by takedown attempts. He didn't even have to get the takedown. He just had to keep Neil on his back foot. Like the annoying Southpaw versus Orthodox, just kind of front hand grab. You could tell that Neil was incredibly frustrated and just never made any adjustments. He's only 30 years old. He has gifts. Again, he's a great boxer. He's got great natural power, but I think he needs to take a step back and kind of regroup and retool a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'm with Duffy here that we learn more about Neil, Geoff Neal, the Hands of Steel Neil. I mean, you're right. The illness. I mean, he was very, very open about how, man, maybe I shouldn't have come back so soon. Maybe I need some time to get my health right and all that. Because if not, this fight gave me a real hard ceiling on him as to how he goes in the rest of the division. And it isn't just because Magny actually outstruck him on the feet distance. A thing I never would have thought happening, because we always say wrestlers and grapplers have the ability to take strikers out of fight with just sheer the threat of the takedown can make them think about that, have their hands a little lower, not necessarily, and then bang, bang, Magny can hit 1-2s and suddenly surprise him. And oh my God, Neil Magny is now beating Geoff Neal on the feet. This really gave me a hard cap, because if he's concerned about the takedowns of Neil Magny, think about the guys above him, above everybody else ranked, aside from maybe Jorge Masvidal, has the ability to take Geoff Neal out of his game with the threat of their takedown. And they have better wrestling to be able to get him there. Like Usman, Covington, Burns, Edwards can all hit great takedowns. Wonderboy and Masvidal are good strikers to keep going. Chiesa will pressure him, would do something to him. I mean, Luque is, crazy enough to do whatever he wants, but they already fought. This is a real moment. Or no, wait, Neil and Luque didn't fight. I don't want to see that yet. I want to see him take some time. This is a problem for Geoff Neal. And W, you hit it on the head when you said he didn't make any adjustments. Now, I'm not going to armchair quarterback and say what those adjustments may have been, but there were adjustments to have been made, and they didn't. And I don't know if that's an issue with Fortis coaching, because we know that Fortis win-loss rates have been really, really low lately. Morono basically won by acting as a marauder, a berserker, something most coaches would have said, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Run face first into the fire kind of thing. Meanwhile, Diego Ferreira had a problematic game plan in the second round, when I think it was Saud was saying, hey, don't stay down, get up, fight your way back up. And as soon as he did that, Gillespie just mat return, and the energy that Ferreira was trying to use to get back up, that was it. His gas tank was just ruined by those exchanges. So again, I don't know if it's a coaching thing, if it's a team thing, but this is a lot harder to swallow loss than Stephen Thompson's.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys. I think this loss for Geoff Neal, it shows something even more so than vulnerability to wrestling. I think it shows that he needs very specific conditions in order to do what he does. With Wonderboy and on just in the striking realm, because for Wonderboy stayed all the way to the outside and picked his shots. Magny took the exact opposite approach. He was all the way in his face and negated any sort of offense that Neal could get off. You have to, if you're Geoff Neal, it looks like you have to be in a pretty specific space range in order to be effective. The space range that a Bilal Muhammad, that a Frank Camacho, that a Mike Perry will decide to stay in, that a Nico Price will decide to stay in, because they like that sort of knucklehead stuff too. That really is what I took away. Neil Magny and Wonderboy are very technical in their approach. They are very, very strategic in how they approach every fight. And that's what happened here. Distance management. I think that would be, if I'm Geoff Neal, that's the thing that I'm looking to improve first before anything else, is distance management. I'm not sure if like his previous bout with COVID, how much it took out of him, or know for a fact that the training situation at Fortis has been affected by the pandemic, if that's a factor at the time. But there definitely needs to be some sort of reset so Neal can get back on track. So now, I think we learned the most about him.
There's something I'm curious if you guys agree or think I'm crazy with. There's a similarity in Neal's approach to Donald Cerrone, who Cerrone has a rhythm. He has a cadence and he has a distance. You think of it when he fought Al Iaquinta. You think of it when he fought Alex Hernandez, when he'd have that specific distance where he wasn't quite being crowded. He was able to get head kicks off, move, take shots, and escape, whereas he wasn't pressured or pushed a certain way. I think Geoff Neal has a similar style to what you were saying. When he can get it into his approach, his angle, his distance, the way that, the way they come at him, whatever it may be, he can be good. But if you try and change that up, like Magny would close the distance and elbow and then circle out, take whatever that may be, he threw him out of his game. So is that a fair comparison, do you think?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's based on different weapons. Like as you mentioned, for Cerrone, it's based on him being in the range where he can get off a kick.
Yep.
Without someone just crashing the pocket on him and tipping him over. Whereas for Neil, it's for his straight and his cross. He wants people kind of at the end of his punching range.
Right. Exactly.
But the dynamic is the same. Sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. All right, fellas. So now let's move things along here. Previously, I tell you to break out your seasoning salt, break out your ground pepper, break out whatever seasonings tickle your fancy here. And I would ask, why are you eating crow this week? But today, I'm going to ask you something different. How's Taste My Crow? Ben, I'll begin with you. How's Taste My Crow?
Oh man, I got a few fights wrong, but the one I got the most wrong this past week/weekend, it has to be the Gillespie versus Ferreira fight. All the question marks were hanging over Gillespie. Is he too small to compete with top lightweights? Did Kevin Lee, when he knocked him out back in November 2019, did he expose a flawed chin, or did he break his chin? What would his mental state be like after his first career loss? Was he going to be gun shy? Was he going to be tentative? Was he going to panic the first time he got hit hard? He could not have stepped up and answered all of those questions and addressed all of those doubts in a more impressive fashion. Like at the end of that first round, and it was a wild first round, one of my favorite rounds of the year, a wild first round. He gets up, he is visibly tottering back and forth as he makes his way back to his corner. I don't know what the live betting odds were at that point, but if you bet on Gregor Gillespie to finish that fight in the second round, you must have made a fucking ton of money. And it feels cheesy to me to talk about things like heart, digging deep, who wants it more. But 60 seconds later, he came out a completely different fighter.
Yeah.
And I don't know what was going on with Ferreira. He missed weight badly. He had a great first round and then just completely went off a cliff, very early into the second. I don't know if he was dealing with an illness or injury or whatever was going on, but he faded while Gillespie, he built. He went from strength to strength in that round. And I was actually glad that that the ref, pulled him off with like 9 seconds left in the round. I didn't need to see a third round of that. It immediately puts Gillespie right back where he was. I thought of him as a guy who kind of jumped the line at lightweight just because he was an NCAA champ, because he was undefeated. He just kind of bubbled up the UFC's rankings, bubbled up the Sherdog rankings. But if he had lost 2 in a row against his first 2 top 10 opponents, well, then we would have known, okay, he's not ready. Turns out, he is ready, or he's at least ready to take on another top 10 guy, and for us to find out how ready he is. And that was very surprising to me. The crow tastes pretty good.
All right, Jay, how's Taste My Crow?
Oh boy, I'm not going to say much. I thought Maurice Greene was going to submit Rogerio de Lima. He didn't. He didn't even try. He didn't even do anything. He just kind of was there, and it was not a good fight. That I don't want to talk about it anymore because I got it so wrong in such a bad way that I just nope. That's the kind of fight. Here's what the last thing I'll say about it. That's the kind of fight where both the winner and the loser could have the potential to be cut after their performance. Like, I'm going way back here. When Wade Shipp fought Jonathan Wieczorek, and it was such a bad mess of a heavyweight fight where they were gassed in 4 minutes, and it was awful and terrible and no good, very bad, but it was hilarious to watch, but it wasn't good hilarious. It was like, like a car crash or a train wreck or a car hitting a train or whatever it may be. And both the winner and the loser got cut after that fight. That's that kind of fight. That there's no redeeming characteristics. Rogerio de Lima doesn't look great at heavyweight. He looks, he's 265. Dude fought at light heavyweight not long ago. and it wasn't a good 265. And he's alternated wins and losses in his last 11. There's nothing for us here. So I'm good. I'm good on that whole situation.
Just leave that crow in the refrigerator and throw it out in a few days. All right. So
put it in the outside garbage.
So my crow tastes pretty good this week. I had the result of the fight right, but I just didn't think we'd take the path to get there. Talking about at Bellator, Rumble Johnson against Jose Augusto Acevedo. Man, like, when you know that Rumble is going to fight someone on short notice, I mean, forget the short notice. When Rumble's going to fight somebody, you fully expect someone to short circuit their brain function at some point. Like, that's something we expect. We've seen him do it against some of the best in the world in his heyday in the UFC. But man, when someone comes in on short notice and like a week's notice to fight Rumble Johnson, and we're talking about in Bellator, a promotion notorious for tapping, your favorite Uber driver on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, you want to fight MMA?" We fully expected some sort of execution. We got an execution in the second round, but man, the tables look quite different upon the first round. Jose Augusto Acevedo had a remarkable first round after appearing to break his hand off of a hard right hand that landed on Rumble's hairline. And somehow or another, he fought through that, dropped Rumble, almost had the fight finished, only to see his efforts go by the wayside in the second round. So I'm eating this crow, man. I knew it was going to happen like this, or like that second round. I just didn't think the first round was going to happen. So there it is. And then also notable to point out the exact same sequence, the exact same finishing sequence that Usman used on Masvidal a couple weeks ago, using the lead hand to brush away the guard, throwing the two straight down the middle. So beautiful work there from Rumble.
You want to know the most surprising thing about that fight? Rumble survived a mostly the hooks were kind of in rear naked choke. He survived a rear naked choke.
That was barely a rear naked choke. Those hooks were not, like, he was just like hanging on his back and he put his arm around his neck.
It was
that.
Okay, fine. Okay, it was a heavyweight rear naked choke. Fine.
Like.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like, that looked like if Rumble Johnson was going to get out of a rear naked choke, that would be the one to do it.
Okay,
right?
yes, sure.
Yeah. And also I was kind of confused when, I mean, maybe knowing Rumble's history with that move. Okay, this is the opportunity to go for the move that's surefire to finish him. But man, like, the success you're having with the ground and pound at that moment, why stop it? So I wonder if this is going to be something that he's going to really, really kick himself over later. Or he probably already has begun that process and reflecting back on how that fight went.
And the finishing, I mean, you mentioned it, the finishing combination was beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, apparently he's picked something up from, like, hanging around with boxers for the last 5 years. Because when I think of the Rumble finish, I just think of, like, the uppercut that sends the guy through the ceiling and he lands on the next level above. But like, like the
like Glover Teixeira's tooth just flying up into the audience, like right next to Taylor Tooley. All right, well, so
I know that. How does it make you feel about the Nemkov fight? Better or worse than if he'd just gone out and killed the guy in 40 seconds?
Better, because he's gone through a little bit of adversity. He's gotten more cage time, so he won't be as rusty stepping in there. But still, Nemkov has been fighting at a top level during all the time that Rumble has been, eating mashed potatoes and bench pressing. So I'm not sure how good that extra round experience of getting his head rattled around is going to do. But it's probably better than him just having a quick finish and stepping in there against Nemkov essentially cold, with only 40 seconds or so of cage time in the last 4 or 5 years.
I can see that. I feel just a little worse because I don't know if it's age or damage or whatever. But Rumble, I mean, this is a Rumble Johnson who my almost stat of the week was the fact that this is the first time he's been dropped that we've ever seen. And he's fought a lot of the best hitters that have ever hit. And this is the first time a 7-2 guy named Gugu was the guy to almost crack Rumble's chin. I see a Nemkov head kick really ruining his day if a short left hand like that does it.
I'm actually kind of forgiving of Rumble in that situation, simply because like he was so close to the finish at that moment. You've got your opponent has a broken hand. He was already outgunned to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's already getting the better of him. The hand breaks, and then he's going in for the kill. Like when he had him against the fence and he's throwing those body shots. Like that right there usually spells the beginning of the end, especially when you hit as hard as Rumble. If I remember correctly, he even landed one of those big uppercuts as well during that sequence.
A couple of them, they were nasty.
So at that point, if you're Rumble, like you've unloaded on this guy who's already essentially a one-handed fighter. If there's ever a time where you can be relatively safe in dropping your guard and just going all out for the finish, that's the moment. I don't think he does that with Nemkov. And then I also found it curious at the end of that fight, after he said something in the camera about, that's what that's his corner gets for talking shit or something like that.
Oh yeah.
That he went on to tell his corner, like, I was just playing with him for a little bit. And I'm inclined to believe that he wanted a little more time in there, and that opened the door for this to happen. So I don't think he went in there necessarily playing, and no one plans to get their head knocked off and then somehow miraculously pull a win out of that. But I do think there might have been some intention to keep things going just a bit longer than they needed to be. And in mixed martial arts, that's a very, very dangerous game, obviously.
Just saying, we were this close to a Scott Smith Pete Sell moment. We were so close.
Yeah, we definitely were. Yeah, I'm sure Ali was having a heart attack when that was going on. All right. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll discuss another near heart attack that he had last week as well. So let's move on to perhaps the greatest title segment in all of media after this ambulance goes past my place. When you live near a hospital, this is what you get. That segment that has the greatest title in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. Jay, I will start with you. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
One championship, I can't quit you. One intern, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. But let's talk. So one championship decided in all of its brilliance. So Shinya Aoki recently tapped out Edward Foliang, and it was a thrilling performance in that it was like, that was the Aoki that I'm like, he's 38 years old and still doing what he could do 15 years ago. He's doing the kind of easy, just making it look like a joke against the guy that smoked him a couple of years ago for the rubber match. It was just Aoki, the Aoki of Aokis. This was just that kind of performance. Long win streak, up for a title. Let's do it. This is okay. There you go. He's going to try and get his old title back from the kid that beat him, Christian Lee. That's the path that you make, right? That seems like it sells itself. Aoki's getting older. Young gun beat him. Let's see if he's already made it back in. Nope. One championship has decided to give Shinya Aoki a different fight. He will be grappling Gordon Ryan. So, if you don't know, Shinya Aoki, the heaviest we've ever seen him is when he fought Sakuraba in that really sad Ryzen event like 6 years ago or so, when he blew up to like 185, but it was like a wrestler's build weight 185. It wasn't really. So Gordon Ryan is what, 220 easy. He's basically made out of steel.
Gordon Ryan has legs for arms.
Yeah, he's without being without bringing any sort of hyperbole to the table, he's one of the best grapplers that any of us have ever seen. Mm-hmm. Period, bar none. Wins over everybody. It's unbelievable things he can do. He's on what? I think he's on like a 12 or 15 grappling match submission streak. Just terrifying. So he's going to outweigh Aoki by 50 pounds, and that's what's happening in August. So Aoki will be on the table or on the shelf preparing for a grappling match because one championship can't quit one championship.
Are you saying that they've already done it and it's sitting in a vault somewhere ready to be released?
I'm saying it happened like 2 weeks ago or so. And now Aoki's recovering because he broke his everything because Gordon Ryan caught him in an armbar rear naked choke that somehow broke his shoulder and his arm at the same time.
So right now they're doing the post-production CGI
Yes.
to complete the fight. So
the-
what a bizarre move from one championship to like spoil a highly anticipated MMA debut like this. But
it's not even, and that's a crazy thing. One has Gordon Ryan signed. They could throw him in the they could make him do the MMA, but they're not.
They could give us Gordon Ryan versus Buchecha in grappling or MMA.
How awesome would that be? Oh my God. Why
They were trying
Aoki?
to put together Buchecha versus Rug, which that would have been way
That
too
would have
much.
been horrible.
Yeah. Rug would have lost an arm. But why are they going to do this to Shinya Aoki? I can't get over it.
yeah,
See that I think that's why I'm surprised, Mr. Falcons, because this, even though this is a match he should lose and almost certainly will lose, the best possible scenario, you burn a super hot, super high profile guy that you're trying to bring in there and put one up on Shinya Aoki. On the other hand, you're giving an upcoming title challenger an embarrassing loss to a guy that everyone goes, well, yeah, why'd you make that fight to begin with? Anyway, I don't want to talk about one anymore. I want somebody else to talk about something else, Mr. Falcone.
All right. Well, I'll Ben, I apologize. I'll step on your toes yet again to interject with my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons this week. So I turn on Twitter and scrolling around as normal on a nice Monday afternoon as we're recording this, and I see a retweet from my good friend, and I'm like, hey, bro, what is this? Lewis Lee Scott with a fantastic win by stoppage after a spinning kick. Nice in the picture. You see a guy holding up his arms in victory. The ref, standing in between him and the guy who lost that fight. And then we see another picture. Sam Kelly, 94, progresses to the final of the bantamweight tournament with a rear naked choke. And we see a victor with his hands up. And we see the same ref and the same guy who lost. And this was on the same, like this happened at the same time. And this tweet was accompanied by a caption with these pictures saying a UK promoter is attempting to pass off the same dude as different dudes in consecutive fights by changing his shorts between bouts. They will now be removed from Tapology. So and now as someone who obviously I'm no longer with SureDog, but at one point in time I was there, and I'd still every so often get those random DMs from fighters or some promoters or managers asking about updating fighter records and trying to show me some sort of proof of wins and losses. And I know you guys have a lot more experience in this, but this has got to be one of the all-time just thumbs up. Nice try, brother.
It's
Beautiful.
the worst one I've seen this year,
bad.
not in Russian.
Yes, that is correct. We have seen there's a series. This is my shameless plug of the year. There's a series running on SureDog called the FF Files, where we expose some of the ridiculous tales that are true that get sent to us at SureDog, and we have to review them. This situation in this, I believe it's their first event, but I'm not entirely sure. It's the first in the SureDog database. I looked into it, but it's this promotion called MMA Uncaged, which is weird because, like, Unleashed has the joke that we don't want to talk about SureDog politics, but Uncaged, where they're fighting in a cage. How do we reconcile those? I mean, this particular fighter, this isn't his first rodeo trying to pass himself off as somebody else. I'm going to get a little unpolitic for a second. There are fighters in the MMA community who I can't accuse them of working fights officially because I don't have the proof or the evidence of that. But there are fighters in the stories that we hear over the years where they are brought in to get one over. You know, they're brought in to have somebody else have a showcase performance, and they're going to job, as the wrestling community would call. They're going to get in there, and they're probably going to lose soon, and they're going to tap to strikes or a forearm choke or something that doesn't make sense, because that's just what happens. This fighter is that, and he has also tried to pass himself out. Yeah, he's claimed to be another fighter so he can get in there, because certain, you know, companies might be like, hey man, aren't you that 0-11 guy? Are you sure we want to do this? And this guy, I'm going to rain on a parade for a second to wrap this up here. There's a guy named Mohamed Mokaev, I believe is how to pronounce his name. Mokaev, a very, very promising wrestler in Brave CF. I think he's 4-0 or so right now. And he's, yes, Mohamed the Punisher Mokaev, and he's very promising and exciting, and people are ready for him. He's 5-0 now. Well, he beat this guy in less than a minute. So, just saying, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Shout out to the homie Jim Edwards, whose retweet clued me in to this level of fuckery. Always makes me smile to see some of the shenanigans that happen behind the scenes as far as fight records are concerned. I do not miss having any sort of access or say or anything with the Sherdog Fight Finder. Good riddance. I never want to be anywhere near it for the rest of my life. Much love to the site, though, just except for the racist cop that works there. Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you for your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment. Please let us know, what are you surprised or not surprised about this week?
Okay, well, I'm legitimately surprised. Of course, you know, if you followed worldwide MMA this past week, one of the biggest stories, certainly the biggest story outside of, you know, the UFC, was the weird finish in the Fabricio Werdum Renan Ferreira regular season matchup at PFL 3. If you didn't watch it, basically what happened is Werdum had Ferreira in his classic bicavallo, where he's like forcing you to choose whether to get armbarred or choked, you know, or triangled. Ferreira taps where the ref can't see it. Was it Gary Copeland?
It was Keith Peterson. There was a little nonsense.
Yeah, there's huge nonsense.
And there were sleeves that fit, so it wasn't Copeland.
If Brock Lesnar was a hobbit.
Brock Refsner, baby.
Yeah. Anyway, Ferreira taps, but out of Peterson's view, but then immediately just keeps fighting. He taps twice, keeps fighting, just starts hammer fisting Werdum. They start to hurt. 15 seconds later, the tables have turned, and he has TKO'd Fabricio Werdum on the ground badly. Like, even Mike Fridley, the Angel of Death, didn't complain about this stoppage because you know, Werdum's head was getting basketballed off the floor.
I think Werdum went out for a second too.
Yeah, I think Werdum was completely out because he was
we
because he
ruled
was
it a
kind of
KO.
playing on his side. His head didn't really rest, you know, so he's still getting bounced. But immediately afterwards, in his post-fight interview, he's like, "Look at the video. He tapped." You know, there's a lot of moving parts to this, because yes, he tapped, and yes, Werdum clearly felt it. Werdum didn't really stop the choke, but it's not up to Werdum to stop the choke until the referee pulls him off. The surprising part of this is not the referee mistake or any of that. It's that the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board has already overturned this result to a no contest. 4 days. We're talking about a sport where some of these miscarriages of justice never get fixed. Others take months or over a year even to get to a hearing. This was overturned in 4 days. My problem with it, I mean, I love that justice was swift. The problem is that it wasn't justice. This was not a no contest. This was either a submission win for Fabricio Werdum, or it was a KO win for Renan Ferreira. Turning it into a no contest, I mean, it's the Solomon, like, splitting the baby down the middle. It doesn't really fix the problem. They worked really quickly and came to the wrong conclusion. What do you guys think?
I'm kind of all over the place on this one, because you definitely have to give some room to gamesmanship. there's a reason why fighters are instructed to keep going until the ref stops them. Because this is what can happen if you are trying to win. And keep in mind that there's $1 million prize at the end of the rainbow for whoever wins this tournament. Man, if you can get a head start and get that money, yeah, I might fake a tap too. That just seems to be the logical thing a person will do to get that money. And it wasn't really Keith Peterson's fault even that he didn't see the tap. He was in good position. It's just that where the tap happened, which I think that was very intentional. The tap happened on the back of Werdum's shoulder, out of sight of the ref. The commentary team that was sitting right there barely saw it as well. If you were watching at home in real time, you might have missed it too. It was only on the replay that a lot of people caught on to what was going on. Yeah, like the ref is supposed to stop the fight. So I appreciate an athletic commission actually doing their job and trying to do the right thing. This just may not be the right thing, the way this was handled.
I also take umbrage with a few things that caught up here. Now, I'll mention what I talked about earlier at the beginning of the broadcast to clarify something, that Chad Skelly, he lost to Bobby Moffett in 2018, towards the end of 2018, and it took until 2020 for that to be resolved, and it was in Colorado. It wasn't in like a jurisdiction or a place that doesn't have a commission. It was a state athletic commission that took 18, 19 months to overturn a result. It took 4 days. So here's the problem I have with this situation. This wouldn't have happened to most other fighters on the roster. Maybe about 30% of them would have happened to. And I say that number not because of focusing on anybody in particular, but PFL is known for having a plurality of its roster represented by Dominance MMA. Dominance MMA. And the reason why that is an issue is because the head of Dominance MMA, the head manager, is obviously the manager for Fabricio Werdum, was also for a long time World Series of Fighting, which World Series of Fighting changed its name to PFL. It's the same company, would change leadership and it was bought or whatever. Was the matchmaker was this person, and I don't need to say his name to have Mike Russell write more about him, because we know plenty about this guy. And this is a problem, because this, to me, and I believe this was actually there was a public statement afterwards that said, thank the Athletic Commission, Nick Lemba, who worked all weekend to overturn the decision to a no contest. I want to thank PFL for quickly providing all the necessary evidence. That sentence is the issue I take, because this is a guy who has leverage on PFL. This is a guy who could say, if this didn't happen, I would take my fighters out of PFL. This is a manager that has the kind of power that can say, I'm going to do something if you don't do something. And that's undue influence that I don't like in the sport, because this would not have happened had this happened to Hayden Ferreira. If Ferreira had tapped out Werdum and Werdum had punched him and knocked him out, nothing would have ever happened. And that's the issue I take with it, other than the fact that New Jersey and the NJSACB, they need to work on that. They need to spell it out to like shield or sword or something better like that. But they need it's just, this isn't a 4-day process. And it's not because lawyers take a long time to do it. It's just, it always takes a long time to get it situated. So if they can do this in 4 days, why don't they? If this was an expedited process, how is it this was a special situation? And there's too many questions and not enough answers. And the other last issue I have is this was ruled a no decision, a no contest. This was to say, and this is what I wish we have the information, the paperwork from New Jersey itself to see the rationale of this situation. Because under my theory, New Jersey saw the tap and said, oh, he tapped, therefore he lost, he surrendered, and the fight should not have continued. That means New Jersey has recognized that the fighter submitted. Therefore, they have recognized that Werdum won the fight. But they're not recognizing their own authority to change the result to a win for Werdum, despite that they're actually claiming legally that Werdum won the fight. And that's a real problem I have here, that they're saying that essentially they're claiming New Jersey doesn't have the authority to make this change while recognizing exactly what would need to be done to recognize the change. It's just bureaucracy in action.
Yep, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. So, all right, fellas. So we're gonna keep things pushing. Nearing the end of the show, and we do want to take a few moments to talk about UFC 262 coming up this weekend. So let's move things along to the speed bag. I don't have my regular phone that I use for the round timer, but I had this old phone that has the same app, had the same settings, and has maybe 4 or 5% life left in it. So we're going to get through the speed bag real quick, gentlemen. All right, so let's make sure I set the clock here for 10 seconds. Ben, I will start with you to answer the first question. Sergio Pettis won the Bellator bantamweight title this week. Will he have a better legacy than his brother?
Absolutely not. Anthony Pettis was the greatest fighter on the planet in a much, much better weight range, and just absolutely electrifying. Pettis might have a better record, but
Jay,
it's a real problem because there's no way he can. Sergio can, as long as he's in Bellator. Just can't happen. Level of competition, baby.
All right. Okay, Jay, you get the first question. The next question. Does any woman have a chance to beat Kayla Harrison in the PFL tournament this year? We'll wait until the raging fire truck / ambulance goes
those are
past
going to
my house.
rescue Kayla's next couple of opponents.
There you go.
All right, let's start that clock, Jay.
No.
Thank you.
Perfect timing. Nice assist from my wife there to answer that question for you. Ben.
No, I mean, all these opponents are literally Kayla by whatever she wants.
No.
Absolutely. All right, so now, Ben, you'll get first crack at the last question. Marcos Rogerio de Lima and Maurice Greene was the worst fight since
Greg Hardy versus Maurice Greene.
Not a bad choice. Not a bad choice at all. Jay.
Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou. That's just that level of
See, I'm
Pretty
more
bad.
forgiving Jay Salty because he picked it wrong.
I am salty because I picked it wrong. The crow was too salty, man.
All right, so now I'm switching the clock over to 30 seconds. I will give myself that amount of time to answer all three questions, and I will start the clock after reading the first question. So, first question reads, Sergio Pettis won the Bellator bantamweight title this week. Will he have a better legacy than his brother? Absolutely not, and no fault of his own. I think technically he's always been the better fighter, but Anthony Pettis has legendary one-shot kill power, and he competed in a much more stacked division in 2 promotions holding the belt. So Anthony wins. Nobody is beating Kayla Harrison that's in PFL right now, and Greene and De Lima was the worst fight since, I don't know. I try to forget all the bad ones. And I already told a Paul Brothers joke, so I can't do that again. All right, there we go. So, all right, fellas, UFC 262 is coming up this weekend. Houston will be packed 100% capacity at the Toyota Center. Before I ask specifically about this car, Ben, are you going to be in the building for that?
I will be in the house. In fact, I think tomorrow is the first of the media week obligations. I'll be picking and choosing those just because they happen during the daytime and I happen at night. But yeah, I'm going to be there. I'll be cage side and I'll have plenty to report next Monday.
Absolutely. Sounds great. So fellas, other than the top 3 fights on the card, what are we looking at here for potential sleepers? Jay, I'll start with you.
It's funny to call this fight a sleeper. Well, I guess it's not in the main card, so it's okay. A really pivotal flyweight fight, which is weird to say, also strange to say pivotal for a guy that's on a 2-fight losing streak. But Matt Schnell and Rogerio Bontorin, I think that could be a whole lot of fun. I see I mean, Chanel really turned a corner for me with the Tyson Nam fight because, yeah, he had tapped out some competition that he's supposed to tap out, but his boxing looked that which was traditionally with Schnell's weaknesses was his hands, where he outstruck and didn't fall into the traps that Tyson Nam is so historically great at setting. You know, Tyson Nam is a flyweight with one punch knockout power. I mean, he's like a 2021 Chris Carriasso, but him and Rogerio Bontorin just have that kind of excitement quotient together, which even though they're both submission guys and are going to probably have some really fun ground exchanges, I can see it being a good test on the feet until we get Scramble City. And the flyweight scramble fights, I don't know what it is about them. Maybe it's really hard to type them up in the play-by-play, but think of some of Tim Elliott's best fights. The scramble, the wild scrambles. Louis Smolka, though, just that everything's happening. Oh my God, this is so much fun. I think that's what this fight's going to be. I think this is a real sleeper fight of the night if Tony Ferguson and Beneil Dariush isn't what we hope it is.
All right, Ben, what's one that you want to highlight as a potential sleeper?
You know what? I'm pretty impressed that as currently constituted, the curtain jerker is Christos Giagos versus Sean Soriano. I mean, Sean Soriano, I don't think either of these guys is probably a future top 10 guy, but Sean Soriano is a guy that washed out of the UFC on 3 straight losses, but his problem was grapplers. I mean, he lost to like Tatsuya Kawajiri, Charles Rosa, and Chaz Kelly that we were just talking about. Yeah. He has had a long way back to the UFC, made his way through LFA, through CES, went to Abu Dhabi Warriors and crushed Noad Lahat. He is back, and he's taken on Christos Giagos. I love Giagos because he is the answer to the question, what if a white guy went to Lorenz Larkin's barber? And it should be a slugfest, should be a lot of fun, and it's exactly what you want out of a lightweight card opener. Just a banger that will be kind of hanging in there for fight of the night until something crazy happens on the main card.
And Soriano is doing what Giagos did. Remember, Giagos left the UFC, went to RFA and went to Russia, and then is now back on his second John. So yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah. You know what? I have a fight that could potentially be that crazy thing to unseat the curtain jerker for fight of the night conversations, and that's Mike Grundy versus Lando Venata. Lando Venata consistently put in action matchups, and I don't think this is going to be any different. I see a lot of crazy stuff happening, a lot of spinning, a lot of wild striking, and yeah, I think every time we see Venata, I think we kind of know where he's going to be as far as contendership is concerned, but action seems to be the main order of the day with him, and they don't pair him with just anybody. So looking forward to watching that fight. All right, fellas, so now let's go ahead and make our picks here for the top 3 fights on the card. Jack Hermansson versus Edmund Shahbazyan just got taken off the card, so there's that. In its place, Edson Barboza versus Shane Burgos in the main card. Ben, who you got?
I haven't watched film yet, but I'm leaning Burgos. You know, like just Barboza just flat out hasn't been the same the last couple of years, and Burgos is just coming into his prime.
Jay, who you got?
I really like the style matchup this presents because Edson Barboza is just a wood chipper. You know, he's a guy who his feet and hands are going to be going 10 miles an hour. And this is an important fight for him because he had the losses. I think he just had the first loss to Dan Ige that some people thought he won. And then he got the bounce back fight where he decided, I'm not going to grapple with you, Makwan Amirkhani. I'm just going to do what I want. And Shane Burgos is going to put the screws to him. Like, he's going to go forward. He's going to do whatever he wants. He's just going to throw hands, be in Barboza's face. I feel like that is the kind of style to beat Barboza. If you're not going to take him down, put him back against, like on the, what is Keith called the warning track of the back outside edge of the cage, so he doesn't have far to escape. Because Burgos has some good hands. And Shane Burgos has good hands too. Hey, Jason Burgos, what's up? And like I was in the building for his fight with Calvin Kattar in Boston, and that was a fight. Kattar just he flipped that switch to the next level, and Burgos didn't quite do that. But man, I know I said that Matt Schnell and Rogerio Bontorin could be the fight of the night, but that's trying to sell that fight. This matchup right here if it isn't fight of the night, it's probably because somebody got smoked pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's good analysis there, both, and I'm gonna have to side with Shane Burgos getting the win on this one, and for mainly the main reason that you said, how the X's and O's break down, Jay. If you back Barboza up, it takes those kicks out of the equation. While his boxing has improved over the years, it's still a clear difference between his punching and his kicking. Burgos, on the other hand, a forward-moving striker. They have about the same reach, about the same height, so some of the advantages that Barboza would have at featherweight will be negated. And on top, and Burgos is a guy who likes to throw heavy volume with his hands. And coming forward the whole time with that, I don't see Barboza really having a chance to do what he does. I actually think this is going to be serious one-way traffic. I got Burgos finishing this. I'd say second round maybe that this should be done via punches. All right. So next one on the docket here, Tony Ferguson versus Beneil Dariush. Ben, who you got?
I'm leaning Dariush on this one, and that is based on my belief that Ferguson actually is a little bit of a spent force. I mean, he's lost 2 in a row. They were against top 3 fighters, basically, but he just didn't look the same against Charles the Bronx. I mean, I said at the time they fought back in December, even up to like 2 years ago, I thought Tony Ferguson would have put Charles the Bronx through a meat grinder, but he just doesn't look the same. And Dariush is really coming into his own right now. He's on a 6-fight win streak, and he's just not a guy that loses bad fights anymore. Kind of like I said about Charles the Bronx. Like, Charles the Bronx used to be a gifted guy who could lose bad fights at bad times. That could describe Beneil Dariush as well. It's Dariush's time.
All right, Jay, who you got?
So I know I said that Matt Schnell and Hacharian Bontarin and Edson Barboza, Shane Burgos could be the fight of the night contender, but this fight, man. This is a fight that I would pick completely differently had it happened 3 years ago. Period. The end. It would have been Ferguson all day. It would have been Ferguson by whatever he wants. Probably by one-sided decision. He's not going to tap out Benny unless, who submitted him? Chiesa, a designated submission threat. And Ferguson is just I can do that because I'm right here. Look at my long arms. They're around your neck now. Hey, look, there's my darts. I don't think he's going to get to Benny in that now. I don't know if his strikes have the same snap on them. He has sometimes done enough damage because we know Ferguson. We talked about this for other fighters. Ferguson has that stunning power, but he doesn't have that stopping power. He has that kind of the accumulation of damage, other than like what Katsunori Kakuno. I can't think of a one-hitter quitter performance because that's not really his game. He's a combinations, punches and bunches, punches to spinning back elbow to back kick to axe kick to flying knee. So that's his that in bunches. But at 37, we talk about how fighters hit that age wall in lower weight classes, and Tony Ferguson with historical knee problems and going into this fight against a 5 years younger. Benny's not the springest of chickens, but he's still in that prime range we talk about. I see his ability to threaten Ferguson in all the ways is something that's going to frustrate him, which is how Ferguson was so seemingly helpless against Charles Oliveira when he was put on his back, because Ferguson's the kind of guy who will triangle Kevin Lee after being put on his back for 8 minutes of the fight. He'll just say, we're done here. But Benny is the kind of capable grappler like a Charles Oliveira who won't fall into the traps, he won't get into set up anything, he won't leave his neck exposed in a shot to get that long dart set up, something like that. I don't think that he's going to finish the fight. I think it's going to be a hard fought decision, but I think it probably is going to be like a 30-27 that we're going to look at Ferguson and go, if he had just thrown more volume. And that's such a weird thing to think of Tony Ferguson. But yeah, I'm going right now with Benny by decision.
Jay, once again, I'm going to have to side with you on this one. And for largely the same reasons, we look back on Tony Ferguson's career and we see a lot of wars. We've seen like that long streak that he had of beating everybody, the record streak in the lightweight division. a good portion of those fights were back and forth battles where he took a lot of damage. Then you run into Justin Gaethje, someone who literally can just change the trajectory of your life with his power. And he sustained that punishment over the better part of 5 rounds. And then to succumb to like this coming of age version of Do Bronx. I think we've seen the end of Tony Ferguson as potentially the best lightweight in the UFC. I think we've seen the end of that. His style does not lend itself well to aging. And as you push toward 40 years old, athletically, you're going to be a step slower, especially in a lightweight division. It's one thing if we're talking about heavyweights. We're talking about at 155 pounds. And then on top of that, the accumulation of damage. Beneil Dariush, on the other hand, while he hasn't exactly gone throughout his career unscathed, I mean, this is a guy we've seen get knocked down a few times, but he hasn't gone through but so many wars. I think the only clear war I can think off the top of my head is like Jakar Close. And that was pretty recent. Like, showed he can survive punishment and still come back and win. I think even if Tony Ferguson gets some good offense off, I don't think it's going to be very, very long lasting. I expect him to be somewhat gun shy. And even if he's not gun shy, the odd combinations and awkward motions I don't think it's just going to work. This depleted version of him can't pull that off. I think in order for that to be successful, you got to have some of the mystique. You certainly got to have some of the youth and athleticism on your side as well. And I think those things are gone now for Tony Ferguson. So I think this is going to be a pretty rough, lopsided decision in favor of Beneil Dariush. All right, fellas. So now the main event for
did Ben break the fight down, or am I?
Sorry. Oh, you did. Okay.
I went first, yeah.
Okay.
And Jake throwing me off, man.
I space too.
All right, so we'll wrap things up with a brief discussion of the main event this weekend. For the vacant lightweight title, Charles Do Bronx Oliveira takes on former Bellator champion Michael Chandler. Ben, who you got?
I have Charles Do Bronx in this one big time. Chandler's win over Dan Hooker was extremely impressive, but it didn't teach me anything I didn't know about Chandler. Chandler remains a athletic, explosive, like ultra plus athlete with like stupid hitting power. That's what he's always had. And he's an elite wrestler. I don't think either of those things are going to help him against Charles Do Bronx. Like, it's just unbelievable how Do Bronx's game has come together in the last couple of years. And I have Oliveira by finish. Like, I think he's either going to sting him up on the feet and, get a Bravo choke or something out of a desperation shot, or, just take his back on the ground and choke him out. I expect Charles Do Bronx to get the better of the action wherever it goes. Like, I have him big time in this.
Jay, who you got?
I have dissension. There's dissension in the ranks. I look at who Oliveira has fought, and he's fought great strikers, he's fought great grapplers, and he's fought great wrestlers. He hasn't fought a hard hitter, a power striker, since Jeremy Stevens in 2014. I mean, I just look at the guys that he's fought. I mean, maybe Anthony Pettis, I suppose, and that was interesting until he hit him with, I think he get him in like a guillotine or something. But just, he hasn't had to deal with the fight-changing power. And I think that's something that Michael Chandler possesses, which surprised Dan Hooker. I mean, remember, this is a Dan Hooker who went toe-to-toe with Edson Barboza until his wheels fell off. And it was, I think it was the body shots that did it at the end of it. But it was basically an accumulation of 150,000 strikes or so, give or take. I see, and compared to that, and I think that was Hooker's first knockout loss. Was to Edson Barboza, and it was after being hit everywhere to everything. Like if he were fighting in the PFL, every area of him would be red at the end of it because of that little stat thing they show. Whereas Michael Chandler, a couple shots and it was over, and that's such a different thing. Dan Hooker is not obviously a title contender, but he's a perennial type contender who is right there in the top 10 and will probably be there for the next 5 years. Michael Chandler smoked him in a way that's what he do sometimes. Like, he could look at the camera and be like, that's what I do. That's the kind of performance I see that's going to be here. Because unless Oliveira can get him down and keep him down, I see the disparity in striking, especially in power, way in Chandler's advantage. And he can carry that power into the later rounds, and he can do what he wants then. Yeah, man. The only problems he's had, other than the Pitbull quick knockout, which I don't think the Bronx hits that hard, and his ankle falling off, is what Will Brooks out wrestling him. I think that's basically been how long it's been. So unless he really finds himself like a Tony Ferguson fish out of water, what is happening? How come I can't get up? Type of move. I just see Chandler hitting with just frustrating power that will then make Scott Coker just so happy, and Pitbull will be Patricio Ferreira will be so happy, and this will be this I'll make this proclamation. At the end of this fight, there will be a thread on the Sherdog forums. There'll not be my creation. I'm not calling my own shot here. There will be a thread in the forum that will say Bellator greater than UFC, because a Bellator champion will become a UFC champion. Going Chandler probably by second round knockout.
That's a bold pick there. As I'm talking right now, I honestly don't know who's going to win this one. I
went back and forth too.
And how appropriate for me to be the tiebreaker in this, and literally have no idea what to do. But for the purposes of having a good show, we're not going to wrap this up by calling a split draw. I'm thinking Du Bronx is going to get the win here, and that's simply based on the trajectory of their careers. Michael Chandler has been through the grinder and has been competing at a high level for a very long time. At his age, it seems like this is about the time you'd expect to see some decline. We're talking about a Charles Oliveira who is so focused right now, who is so steadily improving, who has seemed to close a lot of the gaps in his game, to dominate Kevin Lee the way he did. Kevin Lee coming fresh off of the Gregor Gillespie win, to dominate Tony Ferguson the way he did so soon after his domination of the lightweight division, save for the ghost fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Like, there's a lot of reason to think that we're seeing a version of Du Bronx that might be here to stay for a little bit. And Chandler, just by doing simple math, I wouldn't say that he is. In fact, I'd even say that, like, his reliance on the power might be his undoing in this. Like, Chandler was never necessarily like the guy who was going to clinically outstrike you. Yeah. He never was that guy. I think in order to beat this version of Charles Oliveira, you have to be that guy. In fact, to beat the older version of Charles Oliveira, you kind of had to be that guy then. You think about the guys who defeated him. Max Holloway comes to mind. Anthony Pettis comes to mind. Frankie Edgar, Cub Swanson. Like, those are guys who are pretty well known for superior striking technique and strategy. I don't see Chandler being able to pull that off. That's not him. He's like a bull. He charges out. And I don't know if you want to be the bull against a Charles Oliveira, this version of Charles Oliveira. I see him holding the lightweight title next. And I don't know if Adonis agrees or not, but he's attention coughing in the background. So there's that. So with that being said, I think that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Unleashed. So definitely follow Jay and Ben. Their work is on Sherdog.com. Ben, especially, will be covering UFC 262 from the ground with exclusive reports for the Walkout Network /Sherdog.com. So go ahead and check that out. You can find me on the Body Lock and MMA on Point. So I know the Body Lock, we will be doing some stuff here. I believe I will be available for our Fight Companion broadcast. So go ahead and tune in to the Body Lock during the fights, so you can see me do edibles and drink water and soda and liquor or whatever else I decide to have on my cheat day. Yeah, and it should be a good time. So remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. And a friendly reminder, actually a not so friendly reminder, don't come in the comments talking dumb shit and expect me not to say nothing back. So just throw that out there. So in fact, I'm gonna reply to you, you goofball, in a little bit. You know who you are, motherfucker. But anyway, you know what time it is. So stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.